Warning, we are going to be talking about reality today here in the Warriors. It may be uncomfortable for you. We're going to be talking about kids, teens, what's surrounding them today in schools, online, in real time, sexual discussion I'll be having. And you know what? Our goal at the Warriors is always to educate you, to give you information you may not be hearing or learning about anywhere else, because our job is always to protect you and your children. But first, you have to know what's going on and what you have to do. Kristen Cobo joins us. She has been in the fight against the sexualization of children since 2020. Kristen is the vice chair of the Morris County Moms for Liberty, and last year she was served with a lawsuit by her local high school librarian after speaking out against the sexually explicit books available to kids in our schools these days, in the library. And you can read more. We're going to dig into this at the website Defend Parental Rights. Kristen is also a licensed mental health therapist, so she's expertly qualified to speak about the deep level of psychological effects, the damage, the schools, the state, what is causing our children heartache and all this mental youth that we keep hearing about, the crisis going on, not only in her state of New Jersey, I'm here in New York, across the entire United States with these policies like 5756. So please follow Kristen on X. I still call it Kristen Twitter. Okay. At Cobo, Cobo, Kristen, Kristen. Did you get that, everybody? At Cobo, Kristen. Let's jump right in now. Welcome, Kristen
Thanks
Cobo,
for
to
having
the
me, Lynn.
Warriors. I'm so excited about this. You know, I want to focus a lot today on the mental health aspect. We're not talking a lot about that, but you're from New Jersey. I couldn't wait to get away from there decades ago when I turned 18 to come to New York. And now I go back there because I have a lot of fond memories of my home state.
Right.
So I'm so thankful and happy you're here, boots on the ground in New Jersey, to talk about what's happening in what I still call the beautiful Garden State. But first, before we get into this, I want you to tell us, who is Kristen Cobo?
Yeah, well, I'm honored to be here, and thank you for all you do to protect our
Thank
children. So I say that I've been in the fight for against the sexualization of children since 2020, and really that speaks to my level of advocacy in the state and really standing up in protection of my own children. But as you said, I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the state of New Jersey, and really, I'd like to think my advocacy started long before I even had kids. I worked in children crisis intervention services with sexual abuse victims as young as 4 since I was 19 years old. So I've been in the fight for about 20 years.
You're a warrior. See, this is why I like to always start with the question, like, whatever you want to share with us about yourself, who are you? Because we don't necessarily know those things about you. That's very important. Now, this is a loaded question. Let's start with, give us the overall landscape. What is happening right now in your neck of the woods?
Whew, that's loaded. So part of what we started seeing happening in 2020, and I talk about 2020 because this is during the pandemic, a lot of people were distracted. We were home. We weren't allowed to send our kids to school. And Governor Murphy and his wife were very busy working with an organization called Garden State Equality to develop new health PE curriculum for New Jersey schools. What that included was a very drastic change to the sex ed curriculum that our kids would be exposed to. So the more we dug deeper, we found that the push really was that sex ed was now being pushed down to the elementary level. So kids as young as 5 were being exposed to different sexual topics that normally wouldn't happen till intermediate or middle school. So that raised a couple of red flags, right? So why would we need to start educating kids younger and younger on sexual topics? Along with that came all of the gender ideology. So teaching kids as young as 5 that it's possible to be born in the wrong body and everything else that comes with the push for teaching gender ideology. So one of the things that I questioned as a mental health professional is, what is the purpose of this? And the state was arguing that the younger you teach about the sex, younger you teach children about sex, the more prepared they are to protect themselves. But that doesn't make sense to me. So one of the biggest concerns I have about this is that if you desensitize children at a younger and younger age to sexual topics, in addition to having adults outside of the home discuss sexual topics with them, it puts them at greater risk for sexual abuse. And for, as we know, the younger and younger kids are exposed to sexualized material, the more likely they are to engage in sex at a younger age. And then all of that comes along with it, teen pregnancy, STDs, and whatnot.
Now, let me ask you, how did you find out they were working on this during this COVID period? Was that through research later on you found out about it? Because I have to share with you, let me digress for a second. I saw the curriculum, fast forward, maybe I saw it in 2022, and I was in shock when it was presented to me behind the scenes, like what we're teaching, a third grader, as an example, do you feel like a girl or boy today as they enter the classroom? Just things like that. So how did you find out this was all going on?
Lots of research. The more we would see things pop up, myself and several other parents in Roxbury, the more research we do, and we slowly started uncovering what this health curriculum really was including and what it meant. And the biggest frustration was we were being told at the state level that, if as parents you don't like it, you can opt your children out. But that's not true, because what they did in a very tricky way was they interwove all of these ideas, the gender ideology, the sexual topics, under their new DEI curriculum, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they're stating that all of this education, the LGBTQ population, is a protected class, right? So all of the education on gender ideology fell under that umbrella. So my child may be opted out of the health curriculum, so the sex ed and beyond, but not all of these ideas related to gender ideology and really the broader framework, which is interwoven in every subject now in the state of New Jersey.
So we're talking about the public school. I've also noticed in some of the work we do a lot of work behind the scenes. You don't see it on Facebook and all, or on our website even. A lot of it's kind of private work. I was astounded fairly recently, I want to say about a year ago, in working with a Catholic school. I'll just leave it at that. That was also, and I did not work with them. They were adopting these policies awful. So I'm seeing it trickle into private charter schools as well. Would you agree with that?
Yes. So what happened was during COVID, many private schools took money, federal and state money.
There you go.
To open schools back up, right? To be able to function. And what that did is subjected them to the certain mandates and standards that the state was pushing. And that's why you're seeing that in some of the private schools.
It's always follow the money, which sounds like such a crass,
Right.
common thing to say. It always comes down to the money. Now, I want to hear about, what is this policy, this 5756? What is this? I'm seeing things. Spread it out for us. Tell me all about it. What is it?
So basically, 5756 is a policy that was pushed back in the late around 2017, 2018, I would say. It was written as guidance. So a lot of school districts, I think, were asleep at the wheel and just rubber stamping everything that came down from Trenton, not really being aware of what it meant or what it would mean. So the state pushed this guidance stating that if children were to identify as anything other than their biological sex, they will not need a mental health diagnosis, a medical diagnosis. They could come into school one day and just say, today, Susie is identifying as Sammy. And that girl would then be able to use the male restrooms, male locker rooms, and vice versa. So again, the biggest concern about this guidance was that parents need not know what goes on in the school. So it states very clearly in black and white that the school officials, it doesn't matter who it is, a gym teacher, an English teacher, a principal can have a private discussion with a child about their gender dysphoria, and they can affirm that that child truly is now the opposite gender. They can start a separate legal file for that child in school and never notify the parents or guardians.
I never understand any of that. I don't pretend to be a lawyer. I am married to one, but there's something called parental autonomy because we deal with a lot of the issues with the trafficking and all that parental autonomy. We can't tell like a parent when to buy your child a phone, which we know is dangerous. We can't say you can't buy your 5-year-old, but we can suggest, well, if you're going to buy the phone, here are the safety measures. I don't understand. What is the argument back, Kristen? Like there's something called parental autonomy. What do they say? The child's in danger. Shut up. Like I really don't get it. I'm not kidding.
It's wild, right? So our argument is always a parent has a constitutional right to direct the upbringing of their own child. So why in the world would a school official who's supposed to want what's best for this child keep that child or keep a secret for that child or kind of create that wedge or encourage that wedge? So the school and these advocates on this side continue to state that that child would otherwise be unsafe if their parents were to know. So this situation has turned into parents being dangerous and parents not being able to do what's best for their children, which we know is not the truth. The reality is, if there are any red flags for safety for a child in the public school system or anywhere for that matter, we are mandated reporters. So if we feel at any point that a child is in danger at the hands of anyone in their life, we have an obligation to report that to the Department of Children and Family Services, right? At that point, they would investigate. So why are we now putting a blanket statement on every parent in New Jersey and saying, you know what, we cannot tell the parents what's going on with their own children because they would be dangerous? It's unbelievable and irresponsible.
It's just crazy. I mean, and dangerous is a good word to use. We don't understand this, but that's another program. We could go into so many reasons we think this is, and we'll touch on some of them. Let me ask you something. We teach our children always, my children are in their 30s now, but we always taught, no secrets. You can feel safe at home. You can, tell mommy, daddy, whatever, all that kind of stuff. I find this so horrendous, utilizing the children to drive, as you said, this wedge. What are the parents around you? Are they so overwhelmed, they're turning it off, they don't want to deal with it? Are they really coming together? What is happening exactly? Because this has to be, a mass movement of all parents and caregivers coming together to say this is unacceptable. And I find here in New York, everybody complains, but they don't, when it comes time to really take action, there's a lot of lacking in that area. What are you finding about this particular issue?
Yeah, I would say this was really a deal breaker for a lot of parents. I have to say I'm really proud of my community in Roxbury. I was born and raised in Roxbury. And what we saw is that parents weren't aware of the depth of these issues and how prominent they were in even our town. So what happened was we started educating parents through our parental rights group and just letting them know the facts. This is what the policies are. Go to board meetings, get to know your teachers. And when we started getting more involved in the Board of Ed races, that's when parents said, listen, I can't get to meetings and I can't really take part in the advocacy, but I will vote. So give me the information. And in 2 years, we were able to flip our board. And I think that that's really where our grassroots movement holds the power, right? We, the people, we, the parents, have a say in what and when our children are exposed to in the public school system. But I do, Lynn, you made a good point. I want to go back to, we teach our kids from a young age that there are no secrets from mom and dad, right? So we go back, and why do we teach our kids that? Because unsafe adults tend to access children by slowly driving a wedge and creating a trust circle, right? An unsafe trust circle. So saying, you can tell me this and I'm a trusted adult and we don't have to let your parents know. So we see that play out, and paired with that early exposure to sexualized content, we have a recipe for disaster here. So kids are being exposed to sexual material in school at the hands of teachers, librarians, and whatnot. And then as they get a little bit older and they start questioning whether it's their identity or questioning who they are, they have adults that are willing and pushing to keep secrets from their parents. So think about that for a minute. That doesn't sit well with me, and it shouldn't sit well with any parent.
No, and it's part of the grooming process, whether it happens online or real time. It's, don't tell your parents, don't, that kind of thing. So let me ask you something. What do you have any kind of information other than, I don't know if you want to talk about your children at all. How many children do you have?
I have 2 children.
Okay,
I'd rather not discuss
no, no,
specifics, but yeah, I have
no,
2
no, no,
children.
no. I just want to know, like,
Yeah.
so you're a mom. I'm a mom, but
Yep.
my kids are older, so yours
Mhm.
yours are younger, obviously.
Mhm.
I do say,
Yeah.
Kristen, like every day, my goodness, they were born before. Like, I wouldn't know what I would do today if I say
Yeah.
this all the time to my husband, like what I would do today with all this going on if they were kids in school. I'd have to
Yeah.
lock them in our apartment and do like homeschooling. And I mean that with the
Right,
work.
right.
You do the work, I do what we know. Um,
Exactly.
again, raising awareness and pointing out is the number one thing. People need to know what's going on. So we thank you for like finding out and providing this information to people because everybody is overwhelmed and worried, and it's like getting hit over the head with a hammer every day with all these issues
It
happening
is.
and things, and it's hard to keep up because every single day there's something new that's popping up here. um
Mhm.
what do you hear anything from other parents, not specifically like how the kids are doing? Because I am a warrior, but I am terrified for our youth. I am terrified for our youth.
Yeah, it's scary to be raising kids in this world right now. I have to say, as a mental health professional, I am perfectly comfortable having difficult discussions with my own children when they're developmentally capable and ready to have those discussions. So I think that raising them in this world, we've had to have some difficult discussions way earlier than I would have liked to. I have to say, my children are both pretty emotionally intelligent growing up in a household with a therapist as a mom, but it really is a scary world to have to say to the kids, you're going to encounter these things in school. And this is contrary to what we believe in our house. And here's how to handle it. So we're putting adult concepts and putting things on children's shoulders
Yes.
at such a young age they shouldn't even have to worry about. And this is the reality. Children should be able to navigate those delicate developmental psychosocial stages of development as children, right? Without the weight of the world and adult issues. But now, whether we like it or not, even with an opt out, kids are being exposed because whether my child is in that lesson or not, they're coexisting in a community with
Yes.
children that are learning these concepts, right? So we can't shield them from that completely. We have to be able to have these difficult discussions and guide them. And it's getting harder.
But you pointed out we really have to step up 2024. The kids are seeing things on their phones anyway, or hearing from their peers anyway. You can be the best parent or think you are and teach them, and they know it's the world we live in. I really try to like preach to people. I use the word preach. Like we
Mhm.
can't let anybody be embarrassed. I do a lot of work with sextortion,
Mhm.
and particularly teenage boys, killing themselves because they've sent a nude image. Now, nobody likes a nude
Mhm.
image as parents or whatever, but we
Right.
can't be embarrassed by it. The kids are
Right.
seeing and hearing everything and surround it, whether it's the music, the entertainment, the schools, the libraries. We have to be very realistic.
Right.
As a mental health counselor, do you deal with kids or just adults or everybody? What do you deal with?
So I have a specialization from Fordham University in children and families. So I work
Oh,
primarily with children and families for the majority of my career. And then after COVID, I decided I had seen and done so much with children, and I wanted to focus on my own children. So I started a private practice focusing on women. And my goal there was to really help heal and empower women as mothers to be able to be warriors for their own kids.
We
And
need
I
that.
think that that really pushes me and helps me in this fight, because we have to be well ourselves before we can be well for our children. And if I could leave parents with just one piece today, I think that we were made for such a time as this, and we are capable. We do have what it takes, but you have to be able to have open dialogue with your kids. And as scary as it is, talk to them and let them know that no matter what's going on in their lives, that you will always love them. So they can tell you anything and you're not going to react or get angry in the moment, because that will really help them come to you with some of these difficult things that they're seeing and hearing in school right now.
And I always point out, first of all, we have to do a warrior workshop with you, because empowering, the mother to empower her own children and family, that is what is needed right now. That is a key piece right now with everything going on.
Mhm.
And plus the kids have to hear it from us, the correct
Mhm.
information, or have the discussion, not from some stranger in the library. Now, do
Exactly.
you want to get into that library story
Sure.
at all? Okay.
Sure.
What do you want to tell us?
Yeah. So, I mean, I did what I think any responsible adult would do. We found a multitude of sexually explicit books. And like I said, I've worked with sexual abuse victims as young as 4 years old that were sold into sex trafficking, that were in the child pornography industry. I have seen the worst of the worst. And now, even working with adult women, victims of child sexual assault, seeing the books and the material that they were sharing and making available to children was just, to me, such a huge red flag. These were books that not only they're not just books that talk about sex. These are books with graphic tutorials, at times pedophilia, tutorials on how to do different sex acts for pleasure. I won't go into too much more detail, but so explicit that the
Right.
only purpose that they could serve is to sexualize their reader. So I spoke out, and I can't regret doing so. I think that we all have an obligation to protect children, and I did what I thought was best, and that was to speak out about it. And we were met with a lot of pushback from the librarian, who said to the kids, here's these banned books, read whatever you want. This was after we spoke out. And then March of last year, we were served with a lawsuit for defamation.
It's so shocking. I grew up in Glen Ridge, New Jersey, so North
Mhm.
Jersey by Montclair and all that. And they had, because somebody contacted me
Yep.
a year ago, it was a mother checking out a book, and maybe it's different now. The library was so rinky dink in Glen Ridge in my day.
Mhm.
Checking out the book with her third grader, and it was
Right.
around Martin Luther King Day. And libraries used to put out like a table for like History Month or Martin Luther
Right.
King Day, and she saw nothing. And then when she went to check out the book with her child, right where you check out was like a little rack with all these same sexual books we're talking about.
Mhm.
And she simply asked, this is how this firestorm started in little
Yep.
old Glen Ridge, who's responsible for picking these, or can I talk to? Nothing, like not fighting, just wanted to know. And
Mhm.
then a friend of hers, another mother, and they started talking about it. Long story short, the hearing that was put off and held, they bust them in, because she said it was bus after bus, and the news
Yep.
covered it. The book ban, nobody's banning books. People are looking for,
Mhm.
why are these books here? Who's picking these books? What's the purpose of these books? As you described, they are
Mhm.
pornography, let's face it, right?
Yep.
Children don't need that. So
Right.
there was a huge thing. And in Glenridge, a couple of the families, couldn't, 6 families couldn't come up against these busting people. 4 of them moved out of town. They were being
Mhm.
harassed. They were having eggs thrown at their nice
Yep.
houses. They're like, we just can't do that. Why do we think this is part of this whole government movement of the National Library something? Like why the library? What's your thoughts on this? What have you found out for us?
So this is a loaded answer. So part of it, I think, is that there are truly people on both sides of the aisle that come together and agree on one thing. We have an obligation to protect children, right? That shouldn't be political. But I think that in this world, that line has been drawn so deep in the sand that people struggle to join together anymore, right? So if I'm on this side, I can't agree with you because you're on that side, right? But the bigger push and the bigger issue is this DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion. So these books are being ushered in under the concept that they are inclusive of the LGBT community. Okay, LGBTQ. The issue with these books is that we do not need to be pushing sexual content on any child, no matter what they are, no matter what category you want to put them in. So we got the pushback because obviously we were arguing that they shouldn't be in there because they were under this umbrella, right? Wrong. We were not going after the subject, we were going after the content. And the facts that they don't want you to know is in our specific high school library, there were 176 books that fell under that LGBTQ category. We were only challenging at the time 11. So we were not going after books that fell under that category. It was just the sexually explicit ones.
But Kristen, they always change the narrative.
Absolutely.
They just change, book ban, which is not a book ban, questioning things. Always on the LGBTQIA plus, as they say here in New York. Nobody. I have to say, my background's in entertainment, so I have worked for decades, like with people that are gay, but they tell me they are shocked that this curriculum is being pushed on kids and is being the kids are the new. I always say there's a normalization of the sexualization of our children. It's been going on the last decade. Certainly, I didn't even realize it 10 years ago. Much more so in the last few years. But they're forgotten about, actually, like the gay community themselves. They tell me, though, this is so shocking. Leave kids alone. You don't hear that in the media, though. You don't hear any of their voices really speaking up for any of that. What do you want to tell us about the lawsuit? Or can you talk about it at all? Like where it stands and how people can help you or get on board? Like, what do you need?
Yeah. So we, shortly after being sued, we were slandered. And like you said, anybody that stands up and speaks out and speaks the truth, you get attacked. So we were called pretty awful things. We received death threats. We were painted as anti-LGBTQ and whatnot. We actually filed a countersuit against the librarian and her attorney husband. So we have our own lawsuit. In the lawsuit that we are defendants in, we are just through the discovery phase, which means that we are almost a year in and it is moving so slowly, which our legal system tends to do, right? Everything's backed up. So there's no end in sight. So if anybody does feel compelled to help, they can visit defendparentalrights.org and share what you can to our Give, Send, Go, because this is something we're willing to continue fighting, but it's expensive. And we have to continue to fight the good fight. We're not willing to back down. In terms of the bigger picture, this is about protecting children. It's not about us.
What is at the crux of her lawsuit? She's being accused individually. This librarian, is she like the head librarian, the only one that runs the library there? Like,
yeah. So
what is she saying?
That's another thing we found out, that librarians really had a lot of power in what they chose. Who knew?
I never knew.
So we kind of dug down, looked at policy, opened some documents, and we found that really the policy said that the librarian chose the information or the whatever books, and then the superintendent was signing off on them. But the superintendent really wasn't ever signing off on anything. So the Board of Ed had no clue these books were there, and so on. So their argument is that we defamed her by questioning these books and the content. But we know that we were just speaking out as parents, and we have a First Amendment right to do so. We did so in the Board of Ed meeting, in that forum, to promote change, to try to do things the right way and say, listen, we're parents, we're taxpayers, and we don't think that this material should be made available to any children, especially in the district that our children are quickly rising.
I want to go back to the mental health for a minute because I
Mhm.
don't think we ever talk enough online, in the media. I'm always talking about it. This youth mental health crisis. I work with a lot of kids actually having these psychotic breaks now because the marijuana, they're vaping, and we know this
Mhm.
fentanyl is just
Yeah.
pouring into the country. No stop in sight. We call it not a drug fentanyl, we call it the poisoning of America.
Right.
Um, as a mental health therapist, what can you share that you want, parents and caregivers to know about mental health? Maybe a couple of indicators, whatever you want to share
Yeah.
to make them aware. Because again, everybody's so busy in their lives, and this is
Right.
no judging. It's just everybody's
Mhm.
overwhelmed. I use that word every day. What do you
Mhm.
want them to know about kids? Because I'm seeing things from ages like 9 to 17
Mhm.
that are just escalating and getting worse every day.
Yeah, don't ignore the little things. I think that we know that the mental health crisis is on a rise, especially among our youth. And no wonder, right? Kids are being
Yeah.
told that it's okay to be a different gender and that it's normal to question what they are. Well, the reality is that's creating so much more anxiety in them. I mean, think about typical development. And then they're having to grasp these concepts that are so foreign. And there's not that unconditional positive regard of just allowing a child to be a child and to develop typically. Um, Kids are anxious, kids are getting depressed at a younger age. And I think that parents need to be more in tune with that and not ignore it and not just tell kids to toughen up, which we're seeing that the anxiety is exacerbated by the uncertainty. And parents, I mean, this runs so deep, but after COVID, parents develop so much more anxiety about the world around them, so of course the children then internalize that. And we need to really at times sit down and just listen to what
Yes.
our kids aren't saying and be a little more in tune with that. I think that it's uncomfortable to have certain conversations, so adults tend to avoid it. But sit down with your kids at bedtime, ask them about their day, ask them what was the highlight of their day, what was the low point for little ones, and then even for our older teens. They don't think we understand anything, right? They don't think we know what they're going through. Open that dialogue.
Great advice because I add to this, put down devices
Absolutely.
15 minutes a day, just start there. Because we work with a lot of groups across the United States. Once they do that in the home, even though the older kids kick and scream a little bit,
Hmm.
keep the devices out of bedrooms so kids can get their rest and things just, they're swiping all night and they're meeting who knows who online. But the adults lead by example. Because adults always say to me, Kristen, like, "Oh, well, the kids don't know." I'm like, they actually do know. They're smart and savvy. They watch
Hmm.
everything. They pick up on all of our
Yeah.
anxieties or emotions. It trickles down to them. So these are good things to point out and remind parents again about to be on the lookout because again, it's escalating all of this youth mental health crisis. So where you're in, what's happening now? The lawsuit's just in this standstill kind of right now. The slow
Yep.
legal system stuck there. We want everybody because it's not just Kristen about your case. Well, I mean it
Mhm.
is, but it's about you. It's about all parents that you're representing in this case. And when you say to me, she's married to a lawyer, I'm like, well, she can just do her legal stuff they can do it all day long.
Right.
So you need funding, you need support. And in the body of this video, I'm going to have all the links. So
Thank you
everybody's
so
going to
much.
know, of course, where they're going to know where to read, where to donate, the whole read about everything. Give us some final words. What do you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I think that also as a parent, I just want to say that kids are struggling to navigate life right now, and I think that we struggle and in turn may let our stress show at home, right? We may have a short fuse, we may mess up as adults, and it's so hard to kind of admit you're wrong. But I think the best thing we can model for our kids right now is that we're human too and that we struggle. So it's important to not only have that open dialogue with kids, but let them
Yes.
know that when you mess up, that you're sorry and that you're working on yourself and you want to do better. Because I think that that enables a child to learn and grow in an environment that they're not being judged in. And that helps them to make those mistakes and learn from them. And I think that we can model that as parents and help kids through this difficult process because the mental health crisis is on the rise.
No stopping that train, but I'm glad we have you to talk about all of this. Listen, you are doing what I call God's work. We have to continue. Bless you, because there's just so much going against. First of all, the moms I meet, I travel across the country. Kristen, they're like
Mhm.
you and me. I don't
Yep.
care what's portrayed online in the media. And
Mhm.
I don't go out actively like talking about things, but people always sort of then gravitate towards me across the
Mhm.
country, and they confide. So we also have this media propaganda we have to be on the lookout for. People have to get away from all of that. They have to find vetted resources such as yourself or the warriors to hear this information we're not being given. So you are doing a tremendous job. I mean, I really call you a warrior, and I'm thankful that we've been connected. We can continue. Kristen Cobo, Vice Chair of Moms for Liberty Morris County, New Jersey. Thank you for all you do to keep the public informed,
Thank you.
kids and families safe. I want everybody to follow you. You're on X, Twitter at Cobo Kristen. And tell me your website again. I want everybody to go there when we're done. Not right now, everybody.
Defendparentalrights.org.
Okay, I had defend parental rights. We need the .org in there, everybody. Let us speak again soon, because this is going to go on. Keep up the communication. I want everybody to understand we do have this youth mental health crisis. Kristen just laid it out for us. She works. She's a mental health therapist. We have to listen to the professionals. Well, the right professionals. Thank you for all you do. You have a home here on the Warriors. I definitely want to
Thank
speak
you
to
so
you
much, Lynn.
again soon, and we will talk in the very near future. Thank you so much.
And thank you for all you do. I'm honored to be on. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.